Well, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all on this holiday time, Cinco de Mayo, right? Yesterday was Star Wars Day, of course. May the 4th be with you, you know. Thank you. I'm going to do my best impression today of Obi-Wan Kenobi. No, I won't. Over the past few months, I've been going over a prayer we say all the time. It's in a whole bunch of the practices we do. We call it the 4 immeasurables. We've been going one by one. The first of which is, of course, loving kindness. In Sanskrit, that word is maitri. The second, compassion. And the Sanskrit word for that is karuna. I'm just giving you these in case you ever run across them. The third, sympathetic joy, which is what we talked about last time. And the Sanskrit word for sympathetic joy is mudita. And the fourth is the one we're going to talk about today. We translate the word upeksha as equanimity. And it's interesting that it's placed fourth, because actually the other 3 completely depend on this quality. Buddha, the historical Buddha, actually taught these 4, and he called them the Heavenly Abodes, the Brahma Viharas. So what he was saying was, when our consciousness lives in these particular abodes, or lives in these particular attitudes, we have the same kind of experience as Brahma, as Brahma, who is the kind of the king of the Hindu gods. And that's the, when Buddha taught, he was in a culture where the gods had different names than the ones we have in the West and all that, but the idea is the same. And Buddha himself was asked if he was a god, and he said, nope, I'm a human being, but I'm an awakened human being. And as he began to give his teachings, there were a lot of, what shall I say? He offered a lot of insight into what it's like to wake up, to be an awakened human being. And these 4 attitudes, these 4 divine attitudes, were one of his main teachings. So if you'll remember, when we talked about loving kindness, one of the themes of that talk was that our mind is like a puppy, and the puppy is generally just chasing after anything that suits its fancy, anything that she smells or he smells and wants, and so on and so forth. And you can wind up, if you have a puppy, with some furniture that gets all chewed up. And you can have, some of their presence left throughout your house, and so on and so forth. And the puppy's not happy about that, because the puppy knows that you're unhappy about that. Our minds are the same. Just like a puppy, our minds actually want to be trained. And by training our minds simply to understand that we have the power to let go of a thought rather than be mastered and ordered around by a thought. We can begin to see some of these attitudes and qualities arise naturally in us. And then once they've started to arise, we can cultivate them and develop them and stabilize them. Because I don't know if you have this experience, I certainly have. You go and do some meditation, it's good, you're sitting, whoa. Maybe it's one of those ones where you get really into the zone and you're blissed out. You know, Obi-Wan's right there with you. It's awesome. And then you get up and you stub your toe because your leg fell asleep or whatever, and you almost fall over, and it's like, oh, bleep, and all of a sudden that's all gone, right? And this is precisely the way life is. All our lives are like that. Also something Buddha taught. But we can train our minds in this superpower we call mindfulness and begin to have that resonance of loving kindness permeate even stubbing our toe. There's a change that happens. And I'm here to tell you, I guarantee very few things in life. But if you practice a little bit every day, doesn't have to be a lot. It has to be genuine, it has to be authentic, has to be done with your whole heart, and it has to be done in the right way. But if you do it for just a little time, you'll start to see this change happening. You'll start to see that when you stub your toe, you don't freak out. You don't kind of lose this divine abode. You don't lose this attitude, even in the midst of that. The same is true with when compassion arises. It rises naturally from loving kindness, and sympathetic joy arises naturally from compassion. Compassion's kind of a mom energy. Sometimes we say prayers where we talk about seeing all sentient beings as our mothers and appreciating them for having given us life and taking care of us when we couldn't take care of ourselves, and so on and so forth. But this is a little bit different. This is where we're the mom. And all sentient beings, and all our thoughts and all our feelings, all our experiences are our children. And so we change a little bit. Instead of wanting to get stuff from them all the time, we want a relationship with them. And when something happens good for them, for someone else, well, it's just like a mom seeing their kid succeed. There's natural rejoicing, right? That's sympathetic joy, okay? Once again, you can possibly be watching your kid at a baseball game, maybe t-ball or something like that, and they do something really extraordinarily, spectacularly good, and you're cheering and you're so happy for them. You're not happy because you did it, you're happy for them, genuinely. And then some other parent is really angry because they're on the other team, and then they you lose that and you get angry. So this idea of stabilizing these attitudes is important, and that's where meditation comes in. If little by little you practice every day, what you'll find is these divine heavenly abodes, these divine attitudes will start to have some stability no matter what comes up, okay? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk a little bit about this equanimity, upeksha. And I also have a little practice that I'll kind of infuse, so get ready for a little guided meditation somewhere along the line whenever it seems right to do it. But before we get started on all that, let's begin with chanting the refuge prayer together 3 times. Let's do the first 2 times in Tibetan, and the 3rd time, just recite it together in English. Sanje chudong soki chonamla, changchu pardu dakni kyab suchi, daki jinso gipe sonam ki, rola penshir sanje druparsho. Sanje chudong soki chonamla, changchu pardu dakni kyab suchi, daki jinso ipe sonam ki, rola penshir sanje ruparsho. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. So what does this stable equanimity look like? Well, think of some great examples. Say maybe Martin Luther King Jr. and the people that allowed him to train them in nonviolence, who maintained nonviolence even when they were being beaten and hit by hoses and all that. They understood that their ultimate aspirations of freedom, of liberation, wouldn't be served by reacting violently to the violence that was coming toward them. Buddha taught that samsara is, shall I say, unsatisfactory by definition. It's designed to be that way. So we should not be so surprised when things don't go the way we want them to go. That all happens because causes and conditions came together to make them happen that way. We should also not be surprised when things go well, because causes and conditions can come together for things to go well. Regardless of that, life keeps flowing, whether we judge it as what we want or what we don't want. That's a personal thing, right? And what Buddha taught is that we're not this individual self that we think we are. That's a bit of an illusion that has to do with the kind of sensors that we have, our eye sensors and our ear sensors, our nose sensors, our tongues, our skin, our emotions. Those are all sensors, and we pick up data. The data is neutral, but we pick it up and then it goes in there and we become conscious of it And then, so the eye consciousness sees something that's beautiful. We go, it's ugly or scary. We're like, well, that or kind of part of it is our reaction, our response to what's coming in this stream of life. The ultimate teaching is that each of us is actually a stream of life, not a thing. Not a thing. That's for another talk. I just wanted to throw that in. I throw it in simply because it's important to know what you're aspiring to, what you're aiming at. And that's what we're aiming at, is to directly experience our own true nature. And our faith is that when we experience that, we'll experience ourselves as Buddha. That's what he said would happen. And according to many teachers and students that have followed the teachings of the Buddha over 2,600 years, guess what? They had that experience, and then they share it, and that's how those teachings come through to us. Equanimity is a big part of this journey that we're on to experiencing, and not just experiencing, but revealing our own sacred nature to ourselves and others. It's how we know. I mean, there are presences in this world that when you're around them, they just absolutely they absolutely give you this feeling of being seen and being loved. That's what it looks like from our side. Hey, I have a practical question. Don, am I loud enough today? Okay, I didn't turn my hearing aids down. It's like, sometimes when they're at normal thing, I'm talking too quietly for the people online. Okay, so what we're trying to establish is something we could call virtuous equanimity. And it will carry us and stabilize us in kindness and compassion and joy and peace. And by creating those conditions, we start to have some of the conditions we need in order for this recognition of our own sacred truth. It's defined as an even-minded mental state or disposition towards all experiences, objects, and things that happen regardless of whether we experience them as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Sharon Salzberg says this, and I like this quote: "Equanimity, the secret ingredient in mindfulness. It does not mean indifference. Indifference is actually what they call the near enemy of equanimity. It doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean giving up or not caring, of being cold or distant. Equanimity means balance. And it's the balance that's born of wisdom." So, when we're doing anything with that in mind, we can begin to train ourselves like, say we're meditating and our mind is really chaotic and it won't settle down and we don't like it, right? And we judge that and we tell a story about that, like maybe somebody yelled at us this morning and we still haven't dropped that and moved along or responded well to that or in a helpful way to that. Maybe we even took the bait and got into it. Oh man, then you got all kinds of stuff to untangle, right? So we're sitting there and we're doing that, and then on top of it, we judge it, and we say, oh, this is horrible, and meditation doesn't help, blah, 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 and we tell ourselves some story and all of that. Well, when we talk about equanimity and mindfulness being an appropriate response to that kind of mind state, it doesn't mean that by doing our practice, we're gonna hide from it somehow or make it go away. I mean, we can, but you can do that by drinking a pint of whiskey too, you know? You'll forget it for a while. And you don't want to use your spiritual path like that. You know, there's spirits and there's spirituality. One probably helpful and the other probably not so much. So the Dharma and aspirations and prayers and meditations aren't meant to be a spiritual bypass lane to get around the stuff that annoys us, right? Spiritual bypassing is really not helpful, actually. Because no matter what, every single experience we have creates an imprint in our minds, and that imprint is a place where our mental energies and emotions and thoughts are going to flow, and just like any imprint or any low spot in the stream, it's going to go there naturally, right? So it's good to understand how to work with whatever it is rather than how to get away from it. And we do that by aspiring to this equanimity. Because if we don't include equanimity in like our loving kindness, it can become attachment and create some kind of imprint that in the long run we don't want to have. When we get attachment, when we're struggling with our own needs and desires and expectations and timetables, when we have impatience, it's this practice of equanimity that will lift up that quality of loving kindness so that even if those things do arise, they don't become so predominant that they knock us off balance. The same is true with compassion. Compassion has to do with wanting to remove suffering. Well, when we see suffering, a lot of times we want to turn away from it. A lot of times we want to run from it. We're afraid. And that fear, if it's indulged in, becomes a habit of responding to situations that arise in life. And we have the habit of fear when we see whatever that is that we see. When we're practicing equanimity, we say, oh, God, I hate that. Oh, that makes me afraid. And rather than just being afraid and reacting to that feeling that we're having in our bodies and in our minds, we can just be with it and watch it and see what happens. And when we can do that, when we can remain in balance, space opens up and we have a chance, because we all have minds, we have a chance that our creativity and our instincts and our insights can be applied and possibly even do something compassionate and remove some of that suffering, right? So it's this equanimity that actually empowers loving kindness and compassion. I don't want to run out of time for this meditation piece, because actually it's the important thing is to learn how to work with it. So the same is true with sympathetic joy. And I think that I'd like to do this meditation now to give you a flavor for one way to work with it. Now, this is something that I actually learned like a long time ago. When I first learned to meditate, it was a different tradition, and they talked about, this particular meditation tradition talked about how to work with the mind and how to work with the energies that are triggered by your experiences and what to do with them. And so when the Buddha taught that what's going to happen with all of us all the time is that we're going to encounter pleasure and pain and fame and shame. And happiness and sadness and all those binary things. And when we do, you might think, oh, good, or oh, bleep, whatever your bleep word is. Or even you might say, this is a boring day, not much going on. What the Buddha taught was, look at your mind right then, right? Don't just take off on a stream of thought following the oh good, like I want more, or oh bleep, I want to get away with it, away from it, or get away with it, yeah. Or this is boring, I think I'll turn on the radio or the TV, see what I can do to entertain myself. What he said is, look right at it. And what you see is that there are different flavors of experience. You can actually almost taste them inside. Sakni Rinpoche also teaches this method, and he says there are 3 components to it. And the components are your breath and something he calls speedy energy. I think that's got something to do with Tibetan translation. But you know how when things come up that are going to knock you off balance, you feel yourself contract a little bit, tighten up. So even, if you've got something that you really like happening to you and you want to get it or get more of it, kind of tighten up, kind of get a little speedy inside, like, how am I going to get more of that? Or if it's really not good, it's like you tighten up You're going to protect yourself. And you get really speedy about getting out of there, and you just feel it speed up, right? Like this morning when I was getting ready for this, I still work, so I really prepare these Dharma talks, work on them on Saturday. And I did this all day yesterday. I was looking at this. How do I want to say this? And I did it, and I put it together. And this morning I went down, I looked at it again, and I decided, okay, I like that. I'm going to print it out. My printer didn't work. Printer didn't work. Does this sound familiar? And, I didn't feel really good this morning. Stomach was a little off. When I tried to sit and meditate, my legs were cramping. It is all of that. Don't we all go through all of that? And so I had to do this practice because I was about to talk to you and say, hey, this is what you do. Because my inclination was to, react and get all tight about getting this printed out. Of course, I rebooted the printer and it was fine, right? And I spent a little extra time stretching my legs and it was fine. And I drank half a cup of coffee or so and my stomach was fine. And I did my practice that I do before I do this, and here I am with the thing printed out. So what do you do with that? Because this speedy energy inside is powerful, and it takes us away all the time. It knocks us off center, we get into fights with people, or we stay too long at the party, or whatever it is. And we kind of lose ourselves. So here's what they say. So the first thing is recognition. So tune in right now. This is the meditation part, so I'm just going to guide you through this. So take a minute, sit up straight, tune in right now. And you might be thinking, boy, this is boring today. Okay. Or you might be thinking, this is helpful. Okay. Or you might be thinking, I wish I didn't come. I hate this. Okay. Doesn't matter. Whatever. We all have these things of liking, disliking, or not caring much. Those are the three basic ways we respond to everything. So look for that. Find that speedy energy that wants something. And once you've found it, just start to breathe long and slow, just for a minute or two. So long breath in, long breath out. Usually at a certain point, after not too long, you can actually feel some physical tightness somewhere in your body. Mindfulness of body is really important in all of meditation, but particularly with this. And when you find that, tightness or speediness, take that energy and with your breath, draw it down below your navel. Just visualize that whatever it is that you've discovered flows down there and you hold it as you breathe in and out. You don't have to hold your breath. And just hold it down there. And by recognizing it and working with it, and moving it a little bit, we're uniting this tension with our consciousness itself. We become conscious of it. We're working with it. It's very important that there's a collaboration between mind and the tight, speedy energy. If we don't bring them together and bring them down this way, it's possible that we can settle our breathing down, which in itself is helpful, but our minds can remain really speedy and tight. So bring it all together and bring it down in your body. In the beginning, we rely on our breath. But at some point, once we become proficient, just by using our attention, merely using our attention, we can bring down the speed, the tightness below the navel. In this way, when we practice this and get used to it, we can carry it with us everywhere. And we need that. Because things happen in our days that will throw our loving kindness and compassion and joy out of balance. And this gives us a deep point of balance on the cushion or on our way through the day. And once you've brought the energy down and your breath down and you can feel it, you might even want to loosen your belt a little bit. You feel the depth, the expansion of energy there. You're kind of digesting that energy. The content doesn't matter anymore. It's kind of like having eaten and your body gets the energy, and then the rest leaves you at some future date and feeds some other beings, down the toilet, etc. This is just like that. We can take whatever, whether it's delightful or not, and digest it and bring the energy into our body and let go of the tension that was trying to hold it, the speed of our reactivity. It's just, we can let it go. Once you've done that, particularly if you're on the cushion, like now, focus directly on your mind, whatever you perceive it to be. I assure you, your mind isn't your brain. It's bigger than your body, even. It's this stream of conscious energy, however you conceive of that, and look directly at it. Where did it come from? You can't find it. Where does it stay? Well, it doesn't. It flows. Where does it disappear to? We don't know. But it does disappear. It transforms. Just like water transforms into water vapor, then clouds, then snow, then water again, and so forth. It's just happening. And rest in that. Rest in that. Find your balance in the happening, and you can surf whatever comes along, whatever waves. That state of stillness is actually shamatha, calm, abiding meditation, and that is the core of all of this. That is, let's call it the palace compound where these four abodes are that we can live in. From there, we can enter into the true nature of reality. That state of limitless openness, which is beyond all the kinds of reactions and concepts that arise. And that's what we call vipassana, or insight. There's a fearlessness that comes with this, because once you can do this, you realize no matter what happens, you can maintain your balance. And therefore, everything is workable. And this is why cultivating equanimity, balance, in the midst of whatever's happening is so valuable. It's one of the main tools on our path to enlightenment, on our path to liberation. So I encourage you, you can do this in just a couple minutes every day. You can. And you can develop this in yourself so that it's just in your hip pocket and somebody cuts you off in traffic and the what the bleep kind of thing. The moment you recognize that speedy like reactivity, locate the energy. You know, eyes open, driving, you still can do it. You find out where you tightened up. Steal that energy, take it, and bring it down and digest it. And that energy will power the opening of your consciousness. That is really one of the ways that we can develop that and bring life as it is to the path, and bring the path to life as it is, and that's balance. That's equanimity. It's what it is. There's one more thing that I wanted to share with you, and then we'll have questions and answers. I'm telling you that ahead of time because, see, as soon as I say that, you're going to think, do I have a question? Oh, I do. I don't know how to phrase it. Oh, I know. I can't get up in front of all these people. That's speedy. That's the contraction. When you feel that, if you're inclined to get to the question, Mike, if you feel that, do the practice right now, and then you'll see. It's like very powerful. So this is from an old Chinese Chan monk. I particularly love this. I hope you do too. He said, his name is Su Yun. He said, beyond meditation practice, there's an attitude. A practitioner must learn to cultivate what is called the poise of a dying person. Poise, balance, same. What is this poise? It's the poise of knowing what's important and what's not, and of being accepting and forgiving. Anyone who has ever been at the bedside of a dying person will understand this poise. What would someone dying do if they were insulted? Nothing. What would a dying one do if someone were to strike them? Nothing. As they lay there, would they scheme to become famous or wealthy? No. If someone who had once offended them were to ask them for forgiveness, would they not give it? Of course they would. A dying person knows the pointlessness of enmity. Hatred is always to do meditation. The one we just did, you can do on the fly. But when you're formal at home on your cushion, you open your shrine, you sit down. You contemplate the four thoughts that turn the mind. That's one way to do it, by the way. That little poem, if you will, or whatever that writing of Su Yun is. Because what he's doing is, that's a contemplation of impermanence, of the fragility of life, also of karma, right? And also of the defects of samsara. Those are the four thoughts that turn the mind. They're all in there, right? And this sets up the kind of motivation you want to have for Dharma practice. The next thing is always, always, always do what we're doing when we do the refuge prayer, which is recognize that you're entering the path to enlightenment so that you can be liberated, but also because of interdependence. You're doing it for the benefit of all beings without exception, because whether you love them, hate them, know them, don't know them, don't care about them, whatever, they're all connected to you. We're all connected. So what you're doing matters. It really does. Then you practice properly, whatever that is for you. And at the end, we dedicate the merit, as we will here. So those are the parts of an authentic practice when you're on the cushion. And they can take different forms. You might like Chenrezig practice or Tara practice, or you might like Mahamudra practice, or you might like mantra practice, or some other practice. That's all fine. The middle part is what's really most suitable for you. And it just has to be bookended with a little contemplation, an altruistic mindset, and then ended with a dedication of merit. So, Anyway, there's so much you can say about equanimity. I don't want to say much more except to answer any questions you might have, simply because it's purely this, and it's really experiential. Even though we can fill books with concepts and theories, it's really how you're working with your own experience, your own energy, your own reactivity, how to keep balance. So, if you wish, the mic is open for any questions, comments, corrections, anything that comes to mind.
Thanks, Eric.
Hey, Jim. Good to see you.
Good talk.
Thank you.
I feel, a lot of ways, I think sometimes I'm a little overwhelmed because I'm not quite close to being there, or you speak of, but a lot of personality traits, for instance, anger a lot of times is, it's fear, but it's posturing, and we live in the animal realm, so there's sometimes, I've heard like raccoons outside at night, and they sound really mean. Most of them don't want to fight. They just want to convince anyone else to leave them alone so they can enjoy their food or whatever. But, so a lot of our world that we go in is the fear. But sometimes trying to be, the center of attention, trying to, have like socially. And that's one of the things I, work on as far as, I try not to be one of the, attention grabbers. A lot of times, I try to be interesting because I think that's what people, nobody wants to be bored. And I try, with humor or whatever. But there's always kind of like a competition in social settings.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to be that person that tries to top everybody else's. Oh, that's nothing. One time that's nothing what you're talking about. One time I did blah, 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 I try to, kind of, and if somebody basically is just competing for attention, I'll just basically say, well, I'm done with this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not into this conversation. And a lot of that's with family members.
Yeah, yeah.
And so much of my life is this stress that I've caused. But there's still, I base, a lot of my self-worth on whether I'm loved. And a lot of times, having effect, having love in your heart. A lot of times I try to, for people who, you don't feel that, need love most, the most unlovable kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just don't have the energy. Sometimes I lack energy for a lot of the practice. A lot of times I'll just withdraw and be cynical and just like, this is just too much work.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like it. And I'll just throw in the towel.
Mm-hmm.
At certain times, and a lot of times, they talk. A lot of this talk about the having, love for all. Sometimes it's a matter of energy for me. I think if I was dying, when the dying man's prayer, why don't you people just leave me alone? So I don't know, man. I don't know if I kind of, my dying man's. So I'm sort of rambling, but I don't know if there's any real thing to be said for what I just talked about, but
yeah. So it sounds to me, am I right, that you're a little uncomfortable with that?
I basically, if I go in a social situation, I have like ground rules in my head what I think other people should follow. Mm-hmm. If they don't follow my ground rules, because I'm so great at, my ground rules are pretty good. If they don't follow them, then, they're not worthy of my affection or something like that kind of stuff. I think we all kind of do that kind of crap. I think no matter how good we like to say that we are, sometimes, you know, a lot of us are pretty much, I know I am.
Practices. You only do it if you want to aim towards being free of that. Some people don't want to be free of it. I'm okay, right?
You're right.
That's your business. I can still appreciate you, you know,
Yes, yeah.
even if you can't, you know, necessarily appreciate me for whatever reason. So, you know, you've done a really good job of identifying where you're at. You seem to know when, oh, I'm about to do this now in order to be entertaining or feel more connected to this group, whatever. Just internally, quietly, to yourself. I mean, you can do this on the fly in seconds. I would practice at home so you get used to it, but once you're used to it, you can do it on the fly. And you're in there and you just feel that, you know, that little grabbiness inside that makes you want to do this or that. Identify it, and with your breath or without it, just with your attention. I like the breath though, it's because I'm not so subtle. It's coarse enough that I can feel it and it helps me. With your breath though, you draw it down, look at it, kind of digest it, and then see what happens. And my biggest piece, my biggest hint for that is when you do that, rather than think to yourself, well, I'm going to be less selfish here. Oh boy, that's not so good, you know, because then we're just fighting with ourselves and judging ourselves and doing all that. Instead of that, just be curious. Just say, okay, now I wonder what's going to happen. And you may do something something you don't even like yourself. Who knows? Be curious. And then over time, just see what happens. I only say that with any confidence because people have been doing this for 2,600 years and having some success. It's a human thing. And I figure I'm kind of ordinary human being, and you know, I'm not the first one to feel selfish or to feel disconnected and want to be connected or whatever it is, you know.
Excuse me, I got
So
stuck.
anyway,
I'm going to walk away from the microphone.
that's fine. So just try it and then be curious about, oh, what's going to happen now? You, at the very least, you'll entertain yourself. And that's not a bad thing.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Afternoon now. I just wanted to take a moment at the mic to honor the magic of the universe. It's like the spirit, the deity, the consciousness, the awareness of this center knew that I was coming today and that I had needs today. And everything you said is exactly what I needed to hear today. So I just love the magic and I love the way it works. Something spoke to your heart and said, someone's gonna need exactly what you're saying, especially about equanimity, which I like to use another word, which I learned, which is self-regulation. I've struggled with it my whole life. These feelings, this intensity, whatever, this pain, this trauma, it's there. I can now recognize it, but what do I do with it? And if I may serve this room and all beings in any way by my story, trying not to be too emotional. Some of you may have seen me today in my emotional state, and it may have affected you in an uncomfortable way, and I would like to invite you to think about how you felt if you saw me doing what I was doing and just think about that and what that means to you. And I know I would do the same thing if I saw someone with intense emotion. Like you said, you kind of want to run away from it. You're not comfortable with it. Oh, but please know how much I needed to be here, even in my intense situation. My mom is at home, dying on hospice. Mm-hmm. She just moved into my house, and I am saving the day.
Yep.
And that Speedy energy, I've been dealing with it for the past 3 days.
Oh, yeah.
Got to get her there, got to get it done, got to do it. And all the feelings that I'm having are not being processed. They're out, they're gone. You know, I will not allow myself, I can't afford it. I've got stuff to do. And I can feel it in there though. And you know, I've got night nurses. I'm able to go to bed, but do I sleep? Absolutely not. And is that good for you when you're going through this? Absolutely not. Coming here today was good. I needed to do whatever it is that I do know how to do to process, which is the meditation. Folks might have seen me stretching and then see me crying. Why is she crying if it hurts? Stop stretching. I get it. But your body needs to move that out. And before your talk, I did not know how to do that other than just let it come as it comes. So I'm just a mess here today. But I just love what you said. And I hope we all can just continue to remember this. When you feel it and it's all over the place, get a hold of it. Push it down here. And you know, your talk had spent a little time on that. My mind was like, but then what? Then what do you do? Then what? You digest it and use that, what you might call negative energy. Use just the power of that energy to nourish your whole body and your being to get you to a self-regulated / equanimity state where you can be that what you need to be with everything processed. Thank you. My goodness, this day. I love the magic.
I'm glad you came.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sometimes things are pretty overwhelming. Yeah. And the really important thing is, if you can, to get the good of it, as Pema Chodron says. And Buddhism's full of practices that train the mind so that the mind is ready to work with it. It's just like training anything else. You may love a Brahms concerto. You may know every note, having listened to it forever, but you'll never be able to play it if you don't practice. And if you never played piano before, well, you're going to have to learn to play piano, which will mean running scales and doing all kinds of crazy stuff that doesn't seem to relate to Brahms. But you have to do that. So, you know, look at the practices, particularly of shamatha, of Tonglen, if you've heard of that before. If you want good instruction on that, go to lamakathy.net. There are free PDFs in there. There are like, I think, 3. All of them excellent, but it'll give you the idea of how to work with whatever comes up through this this meditation practice called taking and sending. That's what Tonglen means. So what we're doing is, rather than pushing it all away, we're actually taking it in and allowing our own Buddha nature, our own light, to digest that into loving kindness and compassion. And then whatever's coming after you, let it come. Because once it touches that light, no matter how dark it is, it becomes light. That's the truth of any darkness. No darkness exists in the presence of light. It's not a thing, right? And then we breathe out or offer out the light. And it's more than we originally had because we didn't push that away, but we brought it in and let it be touched by the goodness within us. Does this make sense? Same principle here. That meditation we did, that digestion, is a transformation of whatever it is that's tightening you up, getting you a little speedy, and that's energy, you know? Engineers will tell you, you know, that's what we do. We've got a river and we want to grind some grain, we build a water wheel. We're stealing the energy from the river, not harming the river whatsoever, by the way, but we're making it useful in a way of bringing us closer to whatever our aspiration is. You know, in our case, we aspire for liberation. We aspire for enlightenment. So that's the point. Use it all, but stay on balance. That's the other thing. If you can't stay on balance, you won't be able to use it all. So we need to use these techniques. We need to practice. And so that's, anyway, thank you for sharing. Really appreciate that. So at the end of every practice, we dedicate the merit. And so gather together whatever merit, whatever virtue, goodness that's been accumulated by being here and considering the Dharma, and offer it for the benefit of all sentient beings. We'll say it once in English. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is. Samantabhadra, who knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Thank you, everybody.